For more than 40 years, the United States and Iran have been bitter enemies. They threaten each other, impose sanctions, and compete for power across the Middle East. But the story wasn't always like this. In fact, there was a time when the United States and Iran were close allies. American companies operated in Iran. The Iranian military relied heavily on American weapons, and the two governments worked together politically and economically. So how did two partners become rivals? To understand the conflict between the United States and Iran today, we have to go back more than a century, to the discovery of oil, Cold War politics, revolutions, and decades of mistrust. The story begins with oil. In 1908, one of the largest oil reserves in the world was discovered in Iran. At the time, the country was known as Persia. This discovery immediately transformed Iran into one of the most strategically important countries in the world. The British quickly secured control over much of the oil production through the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, which later became BP. For decades, Iran received only a small portion of the profits from its own oil resources. Many Iranians believed foreign powers were exploiting their country. By the mid-20th century, resentment toward Western influence was growing, and it would soon lead to a dramatic political showdown. In 1951, Iran elected a new prime minister, Mohammad Mossadegh. Mossadegh was a nationalist who believed Iran should control its own natural resources. One of his first major decisions was to nationalize Iran's oil industry, removing control from British companies. The move was extremely popular among Iranians, but it angered Britain and worried the United States. During the Cold War, Washington feared that political instability in Iran could allow the Soviet Union to gain influence in the region. In 1953, the CIA and British intelligence secretly helped orchestrate a coup against Mossadegh. The operation, known as Operation Ajax, removed the democratically elected leader from power. In his place, the United States supported Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the monarch of Iran. The Shah would rule Iran for the next 25 years with strong American backing. For many Americans, the coup was seen as a Cold War victory. But for many Iranians, it became a symbol of foreign interference in their democracy, a memory that continues to influence Iranian politics today. Under the Shah, Iran underwent rapid modernization. The government invested heavily in infrastructure, education, and industrial development. Iran also became one of the United States' most important allies in the Middle East. The Shah purchased billions of dollars in American weapons and maintained close diplomatic ties with Washington. However, the Shah's rule was also deeply authoritarian. His secret police force, known as Savak, was accused of torturing political opponents and suppressing dissent. Many Iranians felt the government was corrupt, unequal, and too closely tied to Western interests. By the late 1970s, dissatisfaction with the Shah had reached a breaking point. In 1979, massive protests erupted across Iran. Millions of people took to the streets demanding the Shah's removal. The protests united a wide range of groups: religious leaders, students, workers, and political activists. Eventually, the Shah fled the country. Soon after, a religious leader who had been living in exile returned to Iran. His name was Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. Khomeini quickly became the central figure of the revolution and established a new political system, the Islamic Republic of Iran. The new government rejected Western influence and accused the United States of decades of interference in Iranian affairs. Relations between the two countries rapidly deteriorated. Later that same year, a group of Iranian students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. They took 52 American diplomats and citizens hostage. The hostage crisis lasted 444 days. For Americans watching on television, the event was shocking and humiliating. For many Iranians, it was seen as retaliation against decades of American involvement in their country's politics. The crisis led the United States to sever diplomatic relations with Iran and impose its first major economic sanctions. These sanctions would become a defining feature of U.S.-Iran relations. In 1980, Iraq's leader Saddam Hussein invaded Iran. He believed Iran was weakened after the revolution and hoped to gain territory and regional dominance. Instead, the invasion triggered a devastating 8-year war. The conflict killed hundreds of thousands of people and destroyed much of Iran's economy. During the war, the United States provided support to Iraq. This further reinforced Iranian suspicions that America was working against them. Over time, Iran developed a strategy to expand its influence across the Middle East. Rather than relying only on its own military, Iran began supporting allied groups in other countries. This network became known as the Axis of Resistance. It includes groups such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, militias in Iraq, and other allied organizations across the region. These groups oppose Israel and American influence in the Middle East. Supporters argue they are resisting foreign domination. Critics say they destabilize the region and fuel conflict. In the early 2000s, international attention turned toward Iran's nuclear program. Iran insisted its nuclear activities were for peaceful purposes, such as energy production. However, the United States and several other countries feared Iran might develop nuclear weapons. Years of negotiations followed. Finally, in 2015, Iran signed a major international agreement known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or the Iran Nuclear Deal. Under the deal, Iran agreed to limit its nuclear activities and allow international inspections in exchange for relief from economic sanctions. For a moment, tensions seemed to ease. But the agreement did not last long. In 2018, President Donald Trump withdrew the United States from the nuclear deal. He argued the agreement was flawed and did not sufficiently restrict Iran's nuclear ambitions. The U.S. reimposed severe economic sanctions on Iran. These sanctions dramatically weakened Iran's economy. In response, Iran gradually increased its nuclear activities again, raising fears of a new nuclear crisis. Tensions intensified further after the October 7 attacks carried out by Hamas against Israel. Iran has long supported Hamas and other groups that oppose Israel. While Iran denied direct involvement in the attack itself, many analysts believe Iranian support played a role in strengthening these organizations. The war between Israel and Hamas increased tensions across the entire region. The conflict eventually expanded beyond Gaza. Israel and Iran entered a period of direct confrontation, exchanging attacks and strikes. At one point, a short but intense war between the two sides lasted nearly 2 weeks. The United States became involved, targeting Iranian nuclear facilities and military sites. Although the conflict eventually cooled, it brought the region closer to a broader war than it had been in decades. At the same time, Iran faces growing internal challenges. Many Iranians have protested against economic hardship, corruption, and social restrictions imposed by the government. These protests have been fueled by rising inflation, unemployment, and frustration with political repression. Despite government crackdowns, demonstrations continue to appear periodically across the country. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, frequently blames the United States for many of Iran's problems. He argues that sanctions and Western pressure are designed to weaken the Islamic Republic. This narrative remains central to the government's political messaging. When President Donald Trump suggested that negotiations with Iran could lead to economic improvement, reactions inside Iran were divided. Some people saw an opportunity to reduce tensions and improve the economy. Others remained deeply skeptical, believing decades of hostility and broken agreements make trust nearly impossible. Today, the relationship between the United States and Iran remains one of the most complex and fragile rivalries in international politics. and the future of that relationship could shape the balance of power across the entire Middle East.